back, my nomads. Welcome back to another Bitcast. Back at it again with Zach. What's going on, Zach?
You know, it's after dark now, so that means one thing.
What's that?
It's going to be hot in here.
The freaks come out at night. So
Well,
they say.
it's Saturday, 6 o'clock in Vegas here anyway, so the freak show's alive and well.
Is it dark there?
Darkish. Not as dark as you, but close.
Gotcha. About that
I
time.
I like the time thing because East Coast is like it's probably already like pitch black for you guys, but it will be like that in another like 30 minutes. I like it. I'm a big fan of that. I thought I was like, this time thing, but I kind of like the dark at a normal time vibe.
Right, I feel you on that. I feel you. So this week, man, anything you want to talk about?
Well, you gave me a movie and I didn't know anything about it. So I figured we'd talk about that first.
Yeah, let's do it.
And then we could talk about all the other fun stuff that we this past week, which has been another freak show by itself.
All right, bet. So Judas and the Black Messiah came out in 21, and I feel like it was a sleeper hit because we were still in the after
it was
effects of the
COVID stuff.
Yeah. And I feel like
there's no after
nobody
effects.
saw this
People were
movie.
still dealing with it, right? Like some states,
True.
you still had to wear a mask. You couldn't do this, couldn't go there, blah, blah, blah,
Very true. Very true. Like at the time, I was still working from home. Like my job was complete remote.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I feel like nobody really saw this, and I think it's a great movie, well directed, from a unknown director, and a great story, true story. No one really saw it, but it was great. Your thoughts?
So I did research on the movie. Couple nominations. Both of the main actors got nominated for this, rightly so. I thought it was very good. It was compelling. Without even knowing what happened with any of this stuff, right? It's very compelling, and there's always tension. And when it comes to stuff like this, you like the tension, and you got to appreciate the tension because that's tough to maintain without it being exhausting.
Exactly. That's a hard thing to do. I mean, we talked about it previously that Denis Villeneuve is very good at that. Just constant tension underneath the surface and just keeping it at a good temperature. And I feel like this movie did the same thing. The title is Judas and the Black Messiah. And metaphorically, you're looking through the eyes of Judas the whole time in this movie. And it's very interesting because it's like, you wouldn't think to do that because you would think that would be hard to connect with the main character, considering he's the Judas of the story.
The main character's story by itself, like the real story, is very tragic because when he has his kind of tell-all for the first time, the day after he commits suicide, right?
Yeah.
And that's strong stuff. And it's tough to be part of two different sides where he was in the fight, as a Black Panther, right, and understand the civil rights stuff. And at the same time, he also understood that their methods were very harsh, and it was no different than any other gang at the end of the day, with them killing people, trade, all that stuff, right? So it kind of loses its message of what they were trying to do.
It didn't start out that way.
No, it was towards the end. Like, how, he was in the stairwell with that guy and he found out that they capped someone and he was like, and then that's when he goes back to his handler. He's like, hey, look, they just killed this dude and they tortured this guy and brutally. Yeah, nasty. But it was one of those things where you can kind of see the progression of he wasn't buying the FBI's narrative of them at first because he saw him. He was like, dude, they're just trying to progress our movement. civil rights, do all the things that MLK and Malcolm X couldn't do because they got killed, and they're trying to like keep that momentum and move forward. Then he starts to see that there's more things involved. The feds kind of have them infiltrated wherever. And the guy who was doing the brutally killing was also informant, and he pretty much carte blanche had the ability to kill people because he was already on the payroll of the FBI.
Yeah, it's it's funny because, like I said, he starts to see the other side of things, and in the beginning of the movie, the main character, I'm drawing a blank. I'm having a dad brain, but he talks about Lakeith Stanford's character talks about how he never really thought about civil rights. Bill, that's his name. Never really thought about Dr. King,
Wild
Malcolm
Bill.
X. Yeah, Wild Bill. And he's kind of an apathetic character. And then he realizes all this stuff that the FBI is talking about, all the stuff that Fred Hampton and the Black Panthers are talking about, is legit real. Like, this is a war. This is a war zone. This is a war on civil rights. This is a war on humanity. And he's starting to see both sides. There is no clean war to say, and I think he
Well, there's no such
realizes that.
thing. I mean,
Yeah,
that's just how it is. I didn't realize how young Fred Hampton was.
yeah, he was 21,
21. It's
and they
wild.
assassinated him in his sleep. Well, he was drugged, but
I mean, here's
yeah,
the thing. At the end of the day, like the feds did a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's pretty documented about all those civil rights leaders, like how they just died the way they did, and that was a lot of it was government, right?
mm,
And they were doing it through non-violent measures. And you add someone who had the ability to get violent and incite, riots and all that stuff. Like, what makes you think he was going to be any different, right?
but the thing is, it didn't. The Black Panthers didn't get violent until the leadership was gone, until the government removed Fred Hampton from the equation, and watching
Oh,
this
like when
movie,
they threw him in prison and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
and watching this
Well,
movie
that chapter
reminded me
was
of
right because this is just a Chicago chapter. This isn't all the all-encompassing chapter. I like the group itself, right? So I mean, I don't know the full basics of all this stuff, like the organization. So I'm assuming chapters are kind of like in individual cells. They kind of operate, but then they're kind of listen to the full party itself type of thing, kind of like how the NAACP works. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
they have each city has their own, or each state or whatever it is. They have a president that runs that particular area, and then they listen to whoever runs the country or the region or whatever. Is that how that works?
Exactly. And it reminded me of how, you know, gangs and gang wars started, right? Initially, the gangs in the inner cities were made to help and protect the people because they couldn't rely on the cops. And because of that, systematically, the government removed the leaders of these gangs
War on
and
drugs
put
was the whole
drugs.
point of that, right? Like that was the whole purpose was to get these guys off the streets, and that was the best way to do it. It's the same thing with organized crime in the 30s. Al Capone could be he couldn't get stuck to anything, so they threw some tax evasion charges on him to get him in prison, right? And then he died in prison
Yeah,
mysteriously. So it's the
yeah,
same
right.
kind of thing. It's the same kind of thing, right? Where it's like, well, let's get these guys off. What's the best way to do that? Oh, let's just make crazy, insane charges in terms of like sentencing and all of this to have them in prison until the end of time, which really created the prison population issues that we have, right? It kind of stemmed from that. And you have a whole generation and a half, 2 generations of people in jail for 20, 30 years for drugs, weed, whatever it is. And you can kind of see the after effects of that stuff now, right? In certain communities. So, I mean, that this was kind of like the prequel to that. This is like prefacing how all of this
Yes,
stuff
and that's
lined up for the Nixon administration to do that. And look, this is not conspiracy. Like, listen to Nixon tapes. He talks about this very specific thing on the war on drugs and how it was meant to imprison black people. He had a phone call with Reagan on it, and Reagan's like, yeah, 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 yeah. And I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, they declassified this stuff like, I don't know, 10 years ago. I mean, listen to it. I mean, if you're getting it from the president himself, like that's as good as anyone in terms of your source material.
exactly. They would remove the leaders, they would funnel drugs into the gangs, and they would print lies and spread rumors about, oh, this gang is saying something about this gang, and then
And they fight each
because
other.
of that, they fight each other.
It's
Exactly,
wild,
and you
right?
see
I mean,
that
but
in
it's
this movie.
smart. I mean, that's the thing is, like, not to digress, but you see other countries doing that with the U.S. population now on social media. It's the same thing. Like, you don't even have to go in there and fight them. Let them do it. You know?
Not to get off topic, but the fact that you said that, we just learned, there's information that just came out that Russia has been paying YouTubers to spread
Oh,
pro-Russian.
let's talk about that later. But yeah, Lauren Chen. Yeah, yeah. I wanted to talk about that too. That completely spaced my mind. Yeah, that's them.
Yes, but yeah,
But
they still use these tactics today. Countries
we do
and
the same thing with the cartels and all this stuff too. Like, we take one or two cartels in Mexico. We're like, hey, look, we'll give you money, fight the other ones on our behalf, and then we'll deal with the fact that you're going to be in power afterwards.
yeah,
It's the same
exactly.
shit. Unfortunately, the entire black community has like paid the price for this. With We've already talked about every social demographic issue that there is that stems from this, right?
Exactly.
And you know, you see why. Like, look, at the end of the day, like, I can't understand this whole aspect because I'm not black in America, especially then. It's just something else. So I can understand why you have to resort to that. Like, I get it. However, it's one of those things where, since I don't have any kind of understanding, like, I don't need to have that understanding to appreciate that this is a good movie and this did a good job portraying how it was in the 60s, because the 60s were pretty wild, you know.
Oh yeah.
Tons of assassinations. You had a president assassinated. You had his brother assassinated. MLK, Malcolm X. You take your
There
pick
was
of
assassinations
just like 5 or 6 of
everywhere.
them all over. And then you add the moon landing to this just for the heck of it. And you got the 60s. And then Vietnam started just to kind of, add some mix to
Yeah.
this. So you got the fight on communism. Everyone's worried that their neighbors are communists and that we're infiltrated by
Yep.
Soviet spies. And you add this, and it's just like, I don't think we're at this level of insanity how it was, but I feel like we're pretty dang close, you know? Yeah.
I think it's a little weird now because everybody thinks they're an expert on everything.
Yeah. Or they need to have an opinion on something that has nothing to do with.
Yeah, yeah,
I feel like our
yeah.
problems are more self-inflicted. Like, in the 60s, there was real legitimate issues and problems.
Legit.
You have
Yes.
fallouts from Jim Crow laws. You have an actual um, systematic oppression of black people. That's just how it was. Segregation. I mean, I don't know how else to really put that, right? Like, that's the bona fide explanation. Like, that's how else can you say anything otherwise, right? That was the purpose of it. So, I mean, we can have that debate now, but we're not talking about now. We're talking about then. But the 60s is just, and going in the 70s, it was just that guy, Bill, what's his last name? What's
Bill
Bill's
O'Neill.
last name? Bill O'Neill. Thank you. When he was having his interview and he's doing his tell all, and you can kind of just tell, like, that's it for him. Like, this is it. You know what I mean? Like, you know how, like, certain people have looks in their eyes that they're committed to this and they know what's happening afterwards? Like, this guy knew he was going to pay the price one way or another, and he decided to off himself, so there was no collateral damage.
Bro, like you said it, man. Like, when you first watched this, you're like, why did you switch from Lakeith Stanford to the actual guy? And I think that's the exact reason why you switched to that interview. Because you can see, like, there's something in his eyes, and like, he has this bravado about him during the interview. I saw some of the interview before
I
this
watched
movie.
all of it.
Oh wow! And he has this bravado, like, I don't care. History will judge me or whatever.
No.
I did what I had to do to survive, and it's like,
Which I
you're lying
understand.
to yourself.
No,
You're
I
lying.
understand why
You
he
do
says
care.
that stuff, right? Like, I get it. Like, it was survival.
Right.
He didn't want to be in prison. Like, I get why he did what he did. Like,
Yeah.
I understand why he's ashamed, but I can see if he wasn't ashamed why he wouldn't be, because it's survival. It's like, I get it.
Mhm.
Who wouldn't? Right? Like, who truly wouldn't? And then you can kind of have the argument after the fact, because hindsight's 2020. did the Black Panthers actually achieve anything and do anything that was eventful? Like, did they actually have to do any of this, right? So you can start having this rational, like, arguments with yourself, like, you know what? I helped blow him up for a reason, and that was good. Like, I saved a bunch of people from being killed, that type of thing, right? But obviously, he didn't feel it that way. He felt a little different.
Yeah, I mean,
And the title
like,
says for itself, right? Like, because the ending's tragic. He did the same exact thing that Judas did. He killed himself when he turned in Jesus, right?
just took him a little longer, you know.
Now, do you think it was a result because of this, or was it a result because he knew there was going to be hell to pay?
No, I think it's because it was eating him inside.
So
That's
guilt.
just my opinion. Because looking at his face during that interview, you know, from the start of the interview to the
Mm-hmm.
end of the interview, it's just like you see that gradual change in his face. And then he's
What
like, he's
made
just
what made
saying
him
the
do it? See,
epithets.
that I don't understand. What made him do it after 20 years of not saying anything, keeping this to himself? Like that's a secret that I would take to the grave, right?
I think he buried it inside and it was just buried deep inside of him, seeping through his pores. And then finally, you know, having a mouthgasm of just spitting it out there and having his sins put on the table. And he's like, oh shit, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, I did
I
that. And I
no,
think
it's a
the
go
question
on.
of
I'm
the
sorry.
interviewee too was, how would you tell your son? How would you justify this to your son? And I think that was like, boom, over the edge.
Well, you do what you have to do, right? And I mean, regardless of how you want to sum that up, like that's the argument.
Yeah, man. I mean, that
It's
that's
powerful stuff,
wild.
man. It's tough. Like
Yeah.
you're in that situation. Like, what do? You want to be in prison for 10 years? Like,
Because to your
honestly,
point, the 60s were wild. And if you're a black man who gets
in
captured by the
prison,
cops
you're done.
impersonating an FBI officer, you're either dead or you're in jail for the rest of your life.
That's. I mean, I would have done what he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who wouldn't? I want anyone to tell me that. Oh, I would stop. All right, it's the same argument that I hear with people about being a Nazi guard in a concentration camp. You know damn well you have held that rifle and shot them too. All right, so let's just stop with the principles for a second. Like no one's that Very few people are principled enough to die for it. You know.
A great man named Beast from X-Men 3 once said, is it cowardice to save oneself from persecution? I
Is that the
mean,
Kelsey Grammer version?
yes, I
Okay.
love that version. Uh, is it cowardice to save oneself from persecution? But like, you know, it's all well and good to sit there on your high horse and say you wouldn't do this, that, and the third. But when you're in a certain situation, you know, I think about stuff
Lies.
like Sophie's Choice. You know, I think about stuff like this where it's you either go to jail for the rest of your life or you get killed by the cops or
It's a
you saw
no-brainer.
somebody down the river. You know,
You're black and American in the '60s in prison. That's just it's a lose lose.
your
What are you doing?
choices are just so limited. Like you don't even know if you're going to live the next day.
So it's different, and I'm glad we don't have these issues now on this scale. I'm thankful for that, right? Because that would be wild to see shootouts with cops and this
Yeah, that's
just
wild.
I mean it's
I mean, we talked about this before, like the 60s compared to now, where if someone called me the N word and I filmed it, I could ruin their life. Like, I could get them
it's
fired.
true.
As opposed to back then, that was
Yeah.
just, you had to take it. You know, somebody calls you the N word.
Take it
So,
on the
hey,
chin.
he called me the N word. They're like, so? So what, you N word? you know, like, you had nobody to complain to. Like, there's nothing you could do. Now I could get somebody fired. I could, you know, potentially ruin their life for being a bigot, you know?
Unless you're a football player or a country smooth music singer. Morgan Wallen. How many times did this guy say that word on camera and this dude nothing?
Bro.
Not a dang thing happened to that dude. He got bigger. He just changed his appearance so he doesn't look like a hick and now he's like this guy, just bro. He can just say this N-word all over the place and he's fine. You know, whatever.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's ain't that the truth, right? I mean, we still have some of this stuff going on, but it's not to that degree.
No, it's not.
Statistically, we're living in the safest time to be alive.
And now it's not just black people, right? That kind of face this type of thing. It's all sorts of minorities, and that was one of the thing about the Rainbow Coalition I wasn't very familiar with. That they got a lot of different people involved in it too, not just black people, which was smart, right? Because if you want to have legitimacy, you got to have them too, man. It's just how it
And
is, you know.
I was about to say that too, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's something to say that's why I'll say Hoover was so intimidated by this guy because he didn't just rally blacks; he rallied Hispanics, even poor whites. He brought everybody
It
together.
turned
He was
into
like,
it turned in it kind of looked like it was less of a race issue and more of a socioeconomic issue. Like poor people in general are going through this. And he saw, I mean, when the Panthers were having the meeting with those like poor white people, he's like, wait, these people are going through the same exact thing as we are. I mean, less scale, right?
right.
But they're going through the same crap, right? In terms of everything. They don't have access to certain necessities. They don't have this. They don't have that. I'm like, man, this is turning into a poor versus rich person problem more than anything, which me and you have talked about this time and time again, especially now. I feel like that's more of it than a race thing at the end of the day. Like, there's tons of poor white people. You go to West Virginia, those towns have the same kind of issues as anyone else, right?
I mean, you've been around where I am. I mean, you just go down the street in Elkton. Dear God,
Dude, out
you
here,
know.
out in the middle of the desert, dude. I'm like,
Mm.
I don't want to beat
But
a
I
dead
mean,
horse, but it was really good. They kind of touched on that, right? And you're right. You can see why Hoover felt a certain way that he did, and this dude had to be taken out. Like, there's no way they were going to arrest him. Like, there's no way.
he even said it. He was like, "Look, jail made him even bigger than he originally was. We need to go beyond that." I
I
mean,
do you think he was a coward? Like he wasn't willing to do everything necessary to do what was required?
who Hoover?
No, Hampton. You know how like
Hampton.
he would flirt that line and he would stop.
I think he was the kind of guy who only was going to do something if he was provoked. He wasn't going to initiate it. Like he was the type of guy who'd be like, "I'm not going to fight you unless you punch me in the face," type of thing.
I get what you're
Like
saying.
I'm not
Yeah,
going to turn the other cheek, but if you
yeah.
hit me, I'm gonna knock
I'm
you
gonna
out.
hit you back. Yeah.
But I also know he was very he was cognizant of that he was black. Even though it was a rainbow coalition, he was the head, he was a black man, so he had to tread lightly, he had to be smart about what he did. And also his girlfriend got pregnant. So, his whole thing turned on, like his whole perspective changed because I think he even said it in the movie where he was like, "Look, I was so ready to die and then you gave me something to live for.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have this life to live for." So he started to tread a little more lightly, it seemed, after
Mm-hmm.
he found out she was pregnant. But yeah, I don't think, I think it was a calculated move to be like, "Look, um, I'm not gonna start anything, but if it goes down, it goes down." I mean, the guy surrounded himself with guns constantly. People around him had guns constantly, automatic weapons. But he was just like, as a precaution, we'll pop off if we have to. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he went in the meetings. He went to places where they would have easily killed him, but he was just like, "Nah, give me your guns, keep him in the car. Let's show him that we here to talk."
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that's brave. Like going to the meetings of all those gang members, the poor whites,
The crowns or whatever they're
the
called, right?
crowns. Oh yeah, the crowns. Like,
And they said that yeah, we were protecting MLK. It was like, yeah, how good did that do for y'all? He ended up dead still. I was like, oh, it's true.
like this dude stared down death constantly. He would just step in people's faces, talk that shit,
Mm,
be like, "Yo, if you're gonna kill me, kill me. But if not, hear what the fuck I gotta say."
yeah.
So I'm like,
Actor did a good job. I've seen him in other stuff. It was very good. Acting was good. I'm yeah,
Daniel
I liked it.
Kaluuya. Like this
Yeah.
guy, I feel like when people talk about the top actors, his name never comes up. But every time you see him on screen, he just kills it, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what he does. And I feel like we need to give him his flowers now because this guy just gives great performance after great performance,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I just want to say, I feel like I'm compelled to say this because I am black. I know
Really?
there's been some there's been
Who
some
would have known?
controversy with British black actors taking a lot of roles, historical black American roles. I was also one of those people who took issue with it, but I will say, after watching this documentary, I think it's called As They See Us, and it's on Netflix, and it's about black actors, directors, scriptwriters,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the British black actors all said the kind of the same thing. They was like, we came over to the States to act because of the environment here. Like we think racism now is a lot more nuanced. And they talked about how over in London and the UK, it's a way more nuanced and it's way more
It's
acceptable.
well, it's just how it is. Like you just
Yeah,
deal with it. It's like how it was in the '60s. You just shut up and deal with it. And I'm just like, what are you gonna
yeah,
do?
and so they said if I wanted to play certain roles, I can only do that here in the States, and I can't fight racism over there. I can only fight it here.
Which is
So that's
weird
why I come
because
here.
they're so woke with stuff, and you're like, they arrest you for saying the wrong thing on the internet, but racism, I don't get it. Whatever. It's
I don't get it. But once I heard that, I was like,
yeah.
okay, I
No, you
understand.
understand.
And come on, play any part you want. I don't
I
care.
mean, here's the thing, right? Like a lot of those black actors, they're probably more aligned with people from Africa than black people here in America. Let's be real.
Yep. Descendants of
African
refugees.
Americans and equating them to blacks not necessarily fair because how many people can trace themselves to Africa? It's not as much
I
as
mean,
you
that's by
think, right?
design.
No, I get why it's by design, right? But it's not what you think, right?
Yeah.
And it's very misconstrued. So it's just, I mean, how many people can trace themselves to slavery? Not a lot. Not as many as people think either, right? So it's very
And
fascinating.
and I'd also be and we also got to mention too, um in those same interviews, those British actors talked about how over there in the UK, acting is treated as a true art. These are people who've been acting since they were kids. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why you see a lot of not just black British actors, but a lot of UK actors, period, male, female, white, black. They're getting a lot of roles because it's treated like a true trade over there, as opposed to here where the arts are just like, oh, we're taking funding out of the arts. Da, da, da. Over there, there's camps for kids and they're on stage since they're kids and they come up and it's a real profession. So that's why they come over here and they treat it like a real job and they can do all the accents. They show up on time. They do their lines. You don't see all this bravado, but I just had to say that because I know there's been a lot of like discourse with a lot of British black actors taking historical American roles. And so I just want to say, you know, it might
If
sound
you can
corny,
do
but
it,
we're
do it.
all in this together. We're all in
No,
this together.
exactly. And I think it shouldn't just be narrow to US when the US is out of any of Western culture, we're really good. It's always going to exist. Like you got to deal with it. Unfortunately, life's not fair. That's just how it is. I have to deal with all the crazy stuff that people say about Jews online. People got to deal with this stuff, right? So it's like, it's like this all over the place. And but
Mhm.
this is as good as it's going to be compared to anywhere else. Because you go anywhere else, walking down the street looking like you, man, it's a different story.
Very, very true. And if time travel ever becomes a thing, I guarantee you, black people will not be using it.
Well, I won't get into it too much, but these alien UFO things could be us from the future using that. They could be a bunch of black dudes flying those things. Who knows?
Oh my god.
You get out, and he's like just a normal dude. He's like, yeah, I like Coldplay. What about it?
Yo, I swear, like I was
Uh,
talking to some friends about this. I was like, yo, man, I think the aliens haven't attacked us or contacted us yet because we're just entertainment to them. They're just like, oh, look at these idiots. They're still arguing over
No, dude,
race.
we're ants in an ant colony. You know,
Yeah,
it's all it
they're like,
is.
look at these idiots,
No,
man.
there's I think there's coalitions of these beings that kind of have like dominion over what country or region of the planet, and they kind of like duke it out type of thing. But
Oh,
I suggest everyone to watch this. You know me, I love provocative movies and things that make you think, and it's a good one. It makes you thankful that we don't live in that now. It really does. Even though I'm not black, I can still be thankful that there's not this insanity. Truly.
question: what do you think of Lakeith Stanford, the guy who played Bill O'Neill? What did you think of his performance? Do you think it was Oscar buzzworthy or what's up?
I don't think so. It was good. I don't think so, but I think that was the time when the Oscars were trying to, get more representation in the award. Because a lot of good movies came out that year too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
yeah, a lot of good movies that a lot of people hadn't seen. Not just this one, but a lot of people haven't watched. And it was because of the time, right? At the time, people
yeah,
wanted to
people
see
were
like
busy.
Godzilla versus King Kong. They didn't want to see anything depressing because we
People were
were during
people
a
people
pandemic,
were people were busy, man. It's like, um,
busy ordering DoorDash because everybody was pretty much still home.
yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I am.
But I think a lot of people just wanted, movies like Dune and King Kong versus Godzilla did great during that time. I think people just wanted to do escapism. This movie, if it had a different, if it came out a couple years later, it probably would have been a lot bigger than it was. That's what
I
I think.
agree. I
And
agree
this
too,
came
and
from
I think the time too with the George Floyd stuff and all this other stuff, like I think the kind of momentum for people caring's kind of changed too. You know,
mhm,
but
yeah, definitely. This came from a director, Shaka King. I mean,
had to look
he
him up.
he
Never heard
helped.
of her.
Guy, it's a guy,
Guy. I'm sorry, never heard of him. Yeah,
and
I had
he
no idea.
he co-wrote this. Not spoiler. Shout out to Ryan Coogler who also produced this
I know
great
him.
movie. Yeah, and Shaka King, he's a fairly unknown writer slash director, and I thought this movie was great. What he did with it, and I'm I'm curious to see what else he's got. It doesn't look like he's doing anything, but yeah, I would hope that he comes out with something else because he's a great talent. And think about it, when your first big movie is having Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanford as even Martin Sheen in here too. Like you got three all stars off the bat. Two of them were nominated for Oscars. Why are you not getting offers? Why are you not
So
doing
how
anything
was Jeffrey Wright not included in this casting?
else? I don't know. That's a good
He did a
question.
fantastic job in American Fiction,
Mhm.
and
He's played Martin Luther King before, right?
yeah,
In
I'm
the past,
and look, he's a very liberal dude, but he does a good job picking movies that don't necessarily like align with what he believes in, which I appreciate him for. Like, I don't have to agree with the guy, but I can appreciate he's fantastic at what he does, right? Um, I like that. I like the fact that you're willing to do something that just like might not necessarily agree with or is repulsive, kind of like what Ray Fiennes did in Schindler's List. And I like that type of thing. But a guy like that needs to be in movies like these, man. He makes them so much better.
Well, Jeffrey Wright is like a true blue actor, kind of like, I watched an interview with Denzel talking about how he treats his acting, and it's like a job to him. This is a profession, it's a trade, and I think Jeffrey Wright is the same way. Jeffrey Wright, something about him for the longest time, I thought he was British, the way he carries himself, the way he talks,
It's because of
but no,
James
he's
Bond.
American.
Yeah, he's from
he's
Brooklyn.
American. Yeah, he's American, and the way this guy speaks, like he's.
His diction's very powerful.
Yeah, he's almost like dang, I just had a brain fart. Shane nah. Ah. Ian McShane. He's like the black Ian McShane. The way he
Christoph
could just
Waltz does the same thing with his diction, how he just precisely says everything.
and the crazy thing about Christoph Waltz is like a unicorn because like you said, he's great with diction and stuff, but he also can't be replicated. Like he's very the way he talks and his
That's why Quentin
mannerisms.
Tarantino had him in Glorious Bastards, because he kept him away from everyone else and no one knew his lines because they wanted to be shocked by the fact that this guy was outrageous with his lines and his role. And people were shocked. They're like, oh my God, we're going there. You know, like it's powerful.
Dang.
If you
But
didn't know that, that's what he did. He kept him secluded from everyone else.
oh shit. I mean, I've heard stuff like that happening before on sets for like villains roles like that. It seems pretty effective, man.
Yeah. So just as
But
everyone should watch this movie, just
oh,
that's how I feel.
we talked about the guy committed suicide, Bill O'Neill. He committed suicide by running into traffic. I'm like, what? He ran
That's
into
a
oncoming
that's a
traffic.
that's a way to go. Jesus,
I know.
you can't jump off a bridge or something. Like you can't do anything else. You can't like electrocute yourself with a toaster. You got to
Apparently,
jump.
before that, he tried to jump out of a second-story window, and someone stopped him. So he walked into traffic. Holy.
Okay, I'd rather just electrocute myself.
Jeez. Like Lakeith Stanford, the guy who portrayed him, said he needed therapy after doing this movie. Like it was that bad.
No. Well, on to better things now. So we got some fun topics I picked, and
Right.
one of them is allegedly about people eating cats in this random town in Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you're gonna have to tell me about this because I'm just hearing stuff.
How do you not know? How do you not know? This has been the number one talked about thing in the news for like the last week.
I don't know, man.
All right, so allegedly in Springfield, Ohio, there is a very large surge of Haitian migrants that were relocated there, roughly 20,000, in a town that's not much larger than that. And a lot of the residents have been making complaints about them going into parks and taking ducks from the pond and chopping off their heads and cooking them on the side of the road and eating people's cats and stuff. And city manager and police say they can't corroborate any of that. There's no evidence to support that, but a lot of the residents say otherwise, including one of the guys from a town hall meeting, who is black, by the way, saying that I don't know how people could be comfortable with having these guys roll up in here doing all of this when I'm just trying to live a normal life, right? And it's like, well, they come from a third world country. What makes you think they're going to stop doing those things, right? It's just wild. And then Trump had to repeat this stuff in the debate. And then the moderators fact-checked him on it. And he was like, well, you should go talk to the residents of the city yourself because they will say otherwise. And it's just been this back and forth thing of now it's turned into this whole meme war with Trump and cats. And he's going to save all the cats if he's elected president because of this whole thing. And it's like, what a world to be in that I have to go Google Haitian migrants eating cats in Ohio as like a topic.
I mean,
I could send you some videos. It's not safe for work when you watch them, though. There's like people cooking them on the side, on like a sidewalk and stuff. I'll send them to you.
Holy.
Or we can watch them here. It's up to you.
No. I'm not getting kicked off of YouTube. Wow, bro. Like, Jesus. I mean, it's a different country, but when you move to another country, you better learn the customs. All right. We don't play that in America. All right.
What, cooking cats? So there was a meme from Babylon Bee. What was it? It was something saying that all the Chinese buffets are going out of business because their main sources of food is now unavailable. I was like, that's messed up.
Some of that chicken don't look like nah.
Yeah, right. It's kitty cat. So it's like these memes of Trump. It's like these memes with cats with machine guns and body armor trying to protect themselves from people. Now it's like turning into this whole thing, dude. It's like, What a time to be in America where this is an actual talking subject with cats being
Oh my
eaten.
dear God.
I love it.
Dear God.
You think this week couldn't get any crazier, and you're like, what the heck is this? I'll
What
send you
is
some
going
videos so you
on?
can watch some people cooking cats.
I
And
mean, come on, bro. Like you move to another country, learn the
it's not
customs. It's like
move, okay? This is like, I don't know what you call it, but you don't forcibly relocate these people and put them in a town like that. Pick another place.
okay, I see what you're saying. I
Yeah,
got
no, they sought asylum, and then the Biden administration's responsibility is to delegate where these people go. Pick this place for them.
Well, shit, like give them like a 10-minute YouTube video on how to the customs of America. Like don't like chop
So,
up
any
animals.
service member, like anyone who's getting deployed to Afghanistan, read 3 Cups of Tea, which is about the customs of like Afghanistan and stuff. Like, you have to understand, like, if you're going somewhere, you got to understand what you're getting yourself into because
Yeah,
Middle East in here is way different, in terms of you can't talk to women, you got to talk to the man that's in front, that type of stuff, right? And,
right.
watch executions, you can't get involved. If there's like killings of women being stoned because they showed their face in public type of thing, like you just let it go. Like it's that type of thing, right? Like you gotta understand it.
Yeah, like what? I don't
Well,
know, bro.
that's enough for this one. I got another one. So Jamie Dimon, which I know you know who he is, the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, the largest bank on the planet, has said that the worst has yet to come, and that it's going to be worse than a recession of what's going to happen. And everyone should be super thrilled that rates are being dropped in the next couple of days from the Federal Reserve. And that's not going to do anything. But worst is yet to come when, dude, I went to Costco and get the same stuff and it's $700 now versus $320 for the same stuff.
Bro.
It's wild. And there's
I
going to
mean,
be
I believe
more.
him. I've heard that from other sources too. It's gonna only get worse, you know.
Yeah,
So
but what does worse look like? No one's working. Like what is that? I mean, look, I was in the financial field for a long time. I worked in high finance, and my job was to make rich people a lot more money, and I was very good at it. However, how he's explaining this, according to MSN, it's like a whole different thing. Like we're
mm,
talking like a full financial collapse
mm.
from a very viable person who understands how this stuff works. This is not nobody. This is probably the most important person in finance in the entire planet.
So you know what's gonna happen? We're gonna get the Dark Knight Rises. We're gonna get people storming into the rich people's homes and
Just
stealing
killing them.
shit. And, yeah,
About to get some
knocking
gold
their heads
bars
off.
and start bartering like libertarians or something if that happens. You know what I mean? And just start.
But then at that point, what's the real currency? What's the real gold? Because it's not going to be money. It's going to be barters. It's going to be
Good thing
trades.
I have a lot of weapons and ammo that can last me several years. So.
Yeah. I don't know, bro. I don't
All
know.
right, so let's get into your tenant media thing since you dropped it earlier. For anyone who doesn't know, tenant media is ran
Oh yeah.
by two conservative influencers named Lauren Chan and Liam Donovan, who are married. Lauren Chen, I don't even think is American. She's Canadian and moved here. It's
Yeah, I
a
know her and her husband are Canadian.
tenant media is based out of Nashville. So allegedly, got to say that term loosely, a news source out of Russia called RT was giving tenant media roughly $10 million to go ahead and use that money for making viral videos or whatever the case is, and they would use that to pay other right-leaning talk heads, so to speak, like Tim Pool and Dave Rubin and Benny Johnson, and they would corroborate for media and videos and stuff, right? And these guys would get paid 10, 15 times the going rate of what they would typically be paid.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what was going on according to them, which It's kind of weird for me
Come on,
because if
bro.
someone's going to pay me 10 times more than what I'm asking for to do some media and have a podcast or whatever, I'm going to be asking some questions like, first off, how?
Exactly.
Because you're looking at this, like, how do you even have the infrastructure to even make this type of money? But two,
Exactly.
I understand it's a lot of money, but it's just like, just ask basic questions. And look, I'm going to believe them at face value unless the government can prove them otherwise, right? Like, look, I didn't know where the money came from. I didn't know it was from the Soviet Union, from Russia. I mean, but it's smart. Like, Russia's like, look, we get 10 million bucks is nothing. Let's create some chaos and and let's get some talking points on, and get someone who's willing to take some money from us and spread content that we want spread, such as, unfavorable views towards the Ukraine Russia war and, in favor of Russia and Ukraine should just, bow out, stuff like that. It was a lot of different things. However, a lot of these views that these conservative podcasters would say, or influencers, so to speak, already shared these views, right? The thing is, how many views could you actually get from this? And it wasn't a lot. If you actually look at these videos that they did stuff with, it wasn't a ton. It was a couple
It
million
wasn't
at
a lot, but
most.
yet they were paying you 10 times the average rate.
Right. And I had a conversation with a friend about this last week, and I was like, look, don't be surprised if there's going to be more dominoes that fall in both sides of the aisle in terms of influencers are taking money from sanctioned nations and they just don't ask questions. Don't be
Mhm.
surprised. Like, and I'm talking about the left and the right. And look, the right has a problem with being sanctimonious with principles. And Lauren Chen, ironically enough, was going about how people who are Jewish and how can they have allegiance to the U.S. when they have an allegiance to Israel, and you should only have an allegiance to one country. She sent out a tweet about this a few weeks ago. Yet she was taking money from Russia to spread information that Russia wanted. So I found that funny. Um,
Yes.
but it just comes down to this isn't it. And there's a reason why Lauren and Liam have not been indicted because, I mean, I'm just making just pure speculation. But if two of your employees are taking money from the Kremlin to go ahead and you're like, oh, we have $10 million, and you acknowledge that you knew you had money coming over from the Russians and private messages going back and forth on X, how do you not get charged for that unless you're
Oh yeah.
flipped?
They they might be looking at jail time.
Well, they haven't been charged.
Well,
The
this is a
indictments are
government
on two of
play.
the employees for Tenant Media that are under them.
This is a government play, and one thing about indictments for government, they take their fucking time.
It's been 3 years. So this started like in 2021, this whole thing. So let's be real. The government's probably like the feds have been working on this for a couple years at the minimum. And they just backtracked it to 2021 when they could actually get the evidence. And, I'm just shocked that it's taken this long for someone to get caught with something like this. And haven't we learned from the 20th century that the Russians are masters at espionage and spying? They don't have to do a whole lot to get what they need. How often do you hear about Chinese spies getting caught when they're high up in the military or one of their agents are married to a military official and they like randomly get like, arrested? It's like this is a normal thing. And I'm disgusted. Like I feel like you look, everyone knows my views on stuff, right? But I look at it from if you're taking money from Russia, you have no business spouting any kind of principles on anything. It's just
Well,
flat
you
out
lost
simple.
your credibility. Even if you're not going to get indicted, even if you're not going to jail, your audience
Oh,
is
they're
going to
done.
dwindle like a
Who's going to
moth.
want to work with them? Who's going to want to co-work and co-sponsor any kind of media with them? I wouldn't.
Nobody. You lost all your credit. You're playing two sides of the fence. You're a liar. Nobody's going to believe you. You're done. You lost your audience.
And these
You lost
people
your
that took the
revenue. You
money
lost your
from
money.
them, I want to believe that they didn't know anything. But if you're saying something that's so favorable for what the Kremlin wanted, how can we trust that too? Because it's just too many question marks. Like, how do you not ask questions where this money comes from? Like flat out. If your going rate's 10 grand and you get 100, The first thing is like, why? What is this?
Exactly.
It's like the pedophile stings for like, for police when they're undercover. Like they say the most outrageous things to get these guys to like, bend over and say something, and then they get them. It's the same thing. Like, how do you not know something when it's so out there? Like, it doesn't make sense. But
Yeah, it's like somebody comes to you, it's like, yo, you know how you go to work every day? Tomorrow you're going to go to work with this backpack, and I'll give you $100,000. Like, why? It's like, don't ask any questions. Just just go to work like you always do, just with a backpack.
China, Iran, all these other countries that have something that we have a weakness that these countries don't have, and that's social media and the ability to have open forum and conversations without being arrested or shot. So other countries don't have that for a reason because they know the dangers of it, right?
Mm.
Spend some
Yep.
money, flip some people. Don't be surprised in another month or so you see more people getting caught because they took money from Iran and China or something like that, and they're doing the same thing.
I mean, there's been speculation, rumor, evidence, whatever you want to call it, of Russia and China doing this for like a decade or so in
Well,
America,
we do the same thing to them, right? But it's just we
starting
have to.
in on the college level.
Well, yeah. Look at the Israeli Gaza thing as an example on the college level. Most of the people fell for Gaza for a reason. Let's be real. And they got sucked in and they didn't even know what they were protesting about or marching about. And they were just saying these same old talking points, river to the sea, blah, 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 not even understanding what that means. And it's the same shit, dude. And look, here's the thing. I hope they get prison time because you gotta set an example for this stuff if this is true. If this is, I mean, it looks like it's true. This is not the type of thing you just drum up. I understand why people feel a certain way about the FBI in terms of like targeting certain people on the right. Like, some people have been falsely charged on stuff, and I understand. But this just seems like this just does not seem like it's made up. Like they legitimately did this stuff.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if this is true, this is treason, right?
No, they're money laundering.
Is it not?
No, it's money
Oh,
laundering.
money law. Yeah,
Treason when you're
yeah, yeah, yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah.
secrets and all this other stuff. It's just that they took money. So this is how they effectively do the money
Yeah,
laundering,
money
right?
laundering.
So let's just say RT, which is a newspaper, gives these two Russian assets that work for Tenet the money. How do you clean the money? You overly inflate the going rates for these influencers. So instead of 10 grand to 100 grand, you effectively pay them, and then that could be added to your payroll. And then you can effectively do it that way. And that's effectively clean. That's how it's being done.
Mm.
So that's the reason why they were
Gotcha, gotcha.
overpaying these guys money. So they can actually send this money through and get it into the US in a legal way. Well, into a clean way. Let's not say legal.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. I hope they get jail time. But before we close this out, I want to get your opinion.
Mm.
Um so we finally got it. We finally got the Minecraft trailer. Did you see this?
No. For a reason. Why are you doing this to me? What are we doing?
This reminded me of a
What
little
is
thing
this?
called the Emoji Movie, but a live action version.
Who does this?
Bro, this just looks bad.
Is that Jason Momoa?
I gotta pause this. Bro, what is it with Jason Momoa and turning into a joke of himself in the past few years?
What's with the
Like,
Barbie leather ranch jacket?
I, it just looks strange. And it's like, it doesn't. I'm not the biggest Minecraft fan, like my godsons are, and it just doesn't look like
I
Minecraft.
associate anyone who likes Minecraft as on the spectrum. It's not my thing.
And why is Jack Black in every video game adaptation?
It just does a shitty job.
He's in every single. He was in Mario. He was in Borderlands. He's in this one. Uh, is it like a staple of the industry that he has to uh, be in these adaptations? Like it just looks bad. It looks
Well,
like
I'm
an
not going to
ad
waste my time
for
with
a
this. I'm going to
game.
go see Megalopolis in IMAX, which is what it's meant for because of how it was filmed.
Wait, when's it
And
coming out?
next week.
You're lying. It's coming out next week.
Hmm.
Jesus, where's the time going? I had so much work to do this week. I was just living under a
I don't
rock.
see
That's
a
why I
lot
didn't
of
hear
people
about the
seeing
cat
it,
thing.
which is fine. So I'm going to go find some time and go see it. But I'm looking forward to it for sure.
I'm gonna check it out. I don't think it's going to blow my mind, but I think it's going to be something that you gotta see in theaters.
It's not. It's. I don't think it's. See, the thing is, he doesn't blow. He doesn't do blow your mind movies. He just makes. He just gives you movies that are impacting, and touch you, not like.
I feel like
Oh,
his movies aren't like mind blowing; they're just raw.
I mean, they're the best. He's the best at whatever at what he does. That's just how it is. So yes, I'm going to go see the Da Vinci of movie makers doing one of his last few movies, and this is his first sci-fi one. So yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah, like his movies are just raw. I don't feel like he's trying to sell you a movie. I feel like he's trying to make a good story.
Yeah, I agree.
So, with that being said, my nomads, check out Megalopolis, check out Judas and the Black Messiah. And I hope you learned something. If you didn't, what can I say? I'm not your father, I'm not your teacher, I'm not your professor. But if you did, that's awesome. Be creative, my nomads. Peace.